So I swept the leg. And I got this t-shirt. Hey guys, DK here. Hope you're doing well. Connectors on this lovely Monday. Whenever you're watching it, it's a little bit dark outside now, so it's... Well, you know, we had the fall back and the time stuff, so I don't even know what time it really is, but I'm sure it's the right time for you to be checking out Connect the Dots. So I want to talk a little bit about something that, well, it's come up a couple of times recently in some conversations with some non-profiteers and some really great nonprofits, and it's the idea of collaboration. And it's also a connection to local government and public policy, and just the importance of how we need to be much more connected into what's going on in our local government and our local public policy conversations, because it affects what we do day to day in the nonprofit world. So as I talk to you today from the Connected Dots headquarters here in beautiful Red Line, Pennsylvania, you might know if you're from the area or specifically from the state of Pennsylvania, we're in a bit of a budget little tiff, I guess you could say. More specifically though, we're in a place where how do I say this? Yeah, we don't have a budget for the state. And so, of course, that means a bit of a drag for a lot of things. But the thing I wanted to talk about was in the nonprofit sector. There's one thing about this that really affects communities all over the state that doesn't get as much play until it becomes what people are perceiving as a disaster. And that is the fact that when the state has their budget problems and they have an impasse when it comes to their budget passing for the next time and the next cycle of dollars and things happens, a lot of nonprofits are a bit of a lurch here because they actually have state contracts or they have work with the state that is not being paid out, and those checks and those support systems then fall apart. The nonprofits then look to each other and they say, how are we going to do this? We can't operate without this money. Yet the services are still needed in these communities. And so the nonprofit sector then goes through, almost every time this happens, a bit of a quandary. And that is, how do we keep operating? How do we keep working effectively for our communities? Yet we don't have this one partnership that's going on that arguably can be the beginning or the ending of a strong community and what's happening within it. Now you're probably saying, Doug, hey, this budget thing affects other sectors, not just the nonprofit sector. And other businesses have to deal with the fact that this budget is affecting their bottom line, perhaps with state contracts. And that businesses have to sort of look to other means, whether that is lines of credit or going and dipping into their cash. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, except for a couple of things here. One being that banks and institutions like that are very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Worried about doing lines of credits and things like that for charities. That's a big problem. It kind of goes like this. Hi, Mr. Banker. I'm a nonprofit organization. Could I have a line of credit, please? Yes. No, you can't. See, it's not always this case, but honestly, there's just a thing about this that happens. Whoa. That's not going to work with the hair. You can't really blame the banks. You can't really blame these institutions for questioning a nonprofit in terms of getting a line of credit or credit cards or things like that. Most organizations look at charitable groups and they say, well, that business isn't really designed with this kind of sophisticated financing opportunities available. Now, there's always exceptions, and of course, the bigger organizations, the bigger nonprofits have a better chance of doing this than others. But what we're talking about are also the smaller groups, the smaller organizations that perhaps have a need that's happening because of this budget impasse. Because remember, it's not just the direct, here's the contract from the state, or here is a state grant that's going to an organization. The other thing that happens is if there are trickle-down problems with the state budget impasse, where organizations who get state funding may not be doing their charitable donations the way they used to do. And so there's constantly these things that happen that organizations may not even necessarily have anything to do with the problems that come from a budget impasse like on the state level, and it's going to affect their bottom line each and every time. So here's a couple suggestions that I have for nonprofits out there when looking at these kind of things, especially when there's a budget impasse like there is in the state of Pennsylvania, but in any state at any time when we talk about public policy. Here's 3 things that I think nonprofits should be thinking about all the time. 1, who's your representatives? Who represents your area, whether it's your state, your district, your county, your city of government? Who's the people you need to be talking to? You have them on speed dial? You have them in your network? Do you have them all on your phone? If not, get that information. 2, Be informed. Make sure you go to your city council meetings. Make sure you go to your commissioners meetings, your county meetings, your state meetings, lobby day. Get involved with this. This whole notion that the nonprofit sector should not be involved in lobbying and should not be involved in their public policy decisions. This is the beginning of the problems. If you don't know what's happening on the front end, you sure as hell won't know what's going on the back end. So be sure you get involved as much as you can and use that time wisely. Get to know what the policies are before they come down the pike in a very adverse way for you. 3, vote. Be sure to remind your staff, your board, your volunteers, anybody who you talk to, whether it's on social media or down the hallway. Give them the time to get out there and exercise their right and vote. You want to be sure that you're a part of this process. Again, if you don't know what's going on at the front end of this, how in the world are you supposed to figure it out on the back end? All the policy struggles, the budgetary issues, all these things that happen throughout the course of a life cycle of a political campaign into operating the policy of government, all that starts with your vote. So make sure people do it. Get out there and VOTE. Let's be honest here. The nonprofit sector is the third largest private employment sector in America today. And in states like Pennsylvania, it's over 15% of the private employment of the entire state. We have a lot riding on what happens with these budgetary crises and a lot riding on what happens with the choices that our politicians are making. It is foolish to think that there is no place at the table for a non-profiteer and the work that we do. We have to take this full advantage, though. We must be the ones who push that forward because there's nobody sitting there saying, well, we got an empty seat. Let's have the non-profiteers come in and sit there. We have to ask for the seat and demand the seat, request the seat, keep pushing for the seat. No matter what we need to do, we need to be at the table. We have good solutions, we have creative ways of thinking about problem solving, and most importantly, we are job creators in our communities. And isn't that the main reason why our governments are battling over budgets now, is that how to utilize everything so we can have good jobs, strong communities. It's the nonprofit sector and what we do. So with that, my connectors, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Make sure you like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and keep up with more information on www.connectthedotsmovement.org. Thanks for spending a little time with me. It's your old buddy DK saying thanks for connecting. Talk to you soon. Hey, Corey. You want to get on camera and say to everybody that we're married? Show off our rings?
No. I don't want to be on camera.
She doesn't want to be on camera. Here's my ring, though.